Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Fertility Goals, the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for all the shares and the likes and the subscriptions. I hope I am providing just very straightforward information to help you or someone you know or somebody you probably meet in the future with their fertility challenges or defining their fertility goals. I am Dr. Maureen Seabird. I am a PhD prepared nurse practitioner and nurse researcher in the space of all things infertility with a very lovely focus of fertility related to women of color, Black women. So in this podcast, I'm also sharing some of my own experiences. I had 2 losses in the last year or so, and I am on my own journey of fertility. And so I'm super excited to have you all here to join the conversation, to get information, and to leave encouraged, really. So today I wanted to talk about how to pick a fertility practice. Picking a fertility practice is a big deal. It is where you are hopefully going to find out your chances of becoming pregnant, hopefully get pregnant and experience your child's first heartbeat and getting your first pregnancy test. Some people are getting their very first positive pregnancy test in this fertility space. And so it is a very complex and sometimes scary environment for some folks. And overall, it's really important that you choose somewhere that aligns with so many of your goals and your values. And it is difficult. It is something that I liken it to a little bit like dating. Just, you don't really know what to expect, but you have to be open. But there's a lot at stake during this experience too. So I don't want to minimize it in any way. And so I just really want to tell you about my process of choosing my fertility clinic, and it can help you as you figure out and try to maneuver your way through the infertility space, how you can choose your own clinic that makes sense with your vision, mission, and values for building your family of your dreams. So first, I want to talk about why I chose the specific clinic that I did. I chose Park Avenue Fertility in Trumbull, Connecticut. I live in Connecticut, and it actually is a very convenient location for me and my family to go to. So I actually work in New York City in particular, Manhattan, Midtown Manhattan. So I could have chose something that was convenient for me in my workspace to go to appointments maybe before or after teaching. However, the fertility process and the diagnostics involves both partners. So my husband actually works from home in Connecticut. So I also wanted to factor in the location in terms of convenience for him as well too. I only go into the city a couple times a week, so location was the first thing that came to mind as I'm thinking of, okay, 1, just proximity for diagnostics, 2, proximity if IVF treatment was needed. Then I would need to be able to go to this office at least 2, sometimes maybe 3 times a week. And I can talk about that later. But location was the first thing that I actually considered as I was ranking what I valued in terms of a fertility practice. Thankfully, I am in a metropolitan area. I have quite a bit of access. If we did a 40-mile radius, when I looked up in Google Maps, all of the fertility clinics, I have so many options available to me, all the way from upstate Connecticut, and even if I wanted to go into Boston, that's only a couple hours away. And then New York City, which is the New York City line, is just about 30 miles from my house. And so I have now access to a lot of the New York City borough fertility clinics, from as close as Westchester all the way into Manhattan. Staten Island would be a trek, so I wouldn't do that. But the first resource that I actually used with finding different fertility clinics is not just Google Maps, but also SART. SART is the Society for Assisted Reproductive Technologies. So basically what SART does is collects aggregate data from all the fertility clinics to help with analyzing all the trends in fertility treatment use, how well fertility clinics are doing, and also what are the fertility clinics and their locations in your area. They can provide information based on locations. And so all you have to do with SART is go onto their website, sart.org, and you can look up where different fertility clinics are, and you can also look up their success rates. Take this with a grain of salt. A lot of this data is older. I believe SART has out now their 2022 and 2021 data, and so it takes a while because basically what it is from the moment that a transfer occurs and you get a positive pregnancy test, they are checking the outcomes of that pregnancy. So you need to wait at least 9 to 10 months from that transfer to figure out, what bucket of category in terms of outcomes that it actually falls under. With SART, I use that to help, one, identify all of the fertility clinics in my location, and then two, what was important to me, success rates. So when I looked at success rates, I basically compared them to the national average for my age group. So I am now 35, but I was looking for the different age groups that are in the SART website. And so for the most part, most of the fertility clinics in Connecticut and New York have very similar statistics. And you just need to keep in mind that the size of the clinics will also affect these statistics. So you have somewhere like a Shady Grove Fertility in the DMV area. They do thousands of cycles per year of IVF. So their statistics are going to look differently than, say, maybe like a Duke Fertility that does maybe hundreds of cycles of IVF a year. So you have to keep those in mind. And me being a researcher, knowing mixed methods, longitudinal analysis, hierarchical things, I realize there's a whole bunch of caveats and factors to the data. But for the most part, you shouldn't be looking at a clinic that has statistics that are very far off than what the national average is, or even in the average of your area. So keep that in mind. So first was location, second was success rates, and then third, I got more so in the nitty-gritty of the size of the fertility clinic. It was important for me to feel important, really, because when you go to a fertility clinic that has a lot of providers, a lot of nurses, a lot of technicians, a lot of everything, it can feel like you are a number very quick. And this is something that I've heard from the people that I speak to. This is something that I've experienced myself in different, specialty clinics that have a lot of providers. You can feel like you're not necessarily developing a relationship with someone. And so I wanted to go somewhere where it was probably 3 or less providers, because at that point, you can develop a rapport, a sense of trust, a sense of understanding with less providers. Even if I got shuffled around between the 2 or the 3 providers, at least I've probably met them before. At least I've probably, seen them in the hallways and got to interact, say hello. That was really important to me. I have had friends where they will go and do all the workups, all the testing with one provider, but then on the day of their transfer or the day that, they're doing something really important, a very important stage, they get paired with another provider that they've never met before. And that makes sense, right? Because that is the purpose of a lot of the providers coming together. So if I go on vacation, I, don't need to shut down my entire practice. However, there is a disservice in some ways for certain people who are looking for that personal one-on-one connection with their provider because they're not able to almost feel secure or feel like there's any consistency in care. And so if anything goes wrong, it can feel like, dang, like what if my provider was there? What if it wasn't this new person? Or, maybe are they this or that? And so all these scenarios come to mind, and I didn't want to experience any of that. I just wanted to have peace of mind. I am okay if the practice shuts down for 2 weeks because my provider got a cold or is sick and all that stuff. I was okay with that because in the ways that I'm approaching this fertility experience, I am definitely more informed than your average consumer because this is what I study, this is what I do. And so there's a lot at stake, right? This is not just some regular experience. This is a baby. This is how I want to conceive. This is how I want to understand how we can bring a pregnancy to live birth. So none of that is not a factor in all this, but I just understand the limitations of a human and that these providers are not God. However, they play a huge role in helping us fulfill some of our God-given desires. So that's how I approached all this. So Park Avenue Fertility right now, it has one physician and I think at least 2 APPs, advanced practice providers. I met one of them, a nurse practitioner. She was great. She was awesome. And I saw the same faces every time I went in for certain testing, which for our next episode, I'll talk about the testing that I've done. So for me, it was important for the number of providers in the practice. Thankfully, there are a couple boutique options for fertility care here in Connecticut. So it wasn't necessarily something that was a needle in a haystack for me at all. So I'm very grateful and thankful for that. So after location, the success rates, the size of the practice, really it came down to personality. So for the 4th one, it came down to personality. Through my conversations with a lot of people, they have said, well, my provider was just very cold in delivering the information, or they lacked compassion, or this or that. And again, I realize I'm a highly informed consumer. Infertility doctors are not therapists. Infertility doctors are not cozy, wozy, fuzzy people in general. They are intense. They are highly educated. They really look at the data and the facts of the matter. And sure, they could do better at trying to deliver really hard information in a softer, more palatable way. And I get that. And there is some information that is very difficult to give to a patient. I, as a provider, I don't know how I can tell somebody in a very gentle way that they only have a less than 1% chance of conceiving based on the fact that they have no good quality eggs. How do you say that with a smile? How do you say that with compassion? How do you say that without hurting somebody's feelings? So keep that in mind. I really wanted somebody who was just going to be direct. I knew how to remove the emotions out of this experience. And so for me, I definitely know I come with a certain privilege and advantage in this space because I know that at the end of the day, they are looking at the data, they're looking at trends, and they're also looking at me and what they see on my scans and putting all that information together to tell a story. So I was okay if they said, Maureen, Peter, you guys cannot have a child because of X, Y, and Z, and there's a less than 1% chance, and said it with a very direct, tone. As I've gotten to know Dr. Levi, I know that he's not going to say it in that way, but there is quite a bit of honesty and direct and just straightforward, sharp, not sharp. He's just very straightforward, and I love it. I really enjoy him. I think he's just a funny person. I can see that he really cares for his patients. He's going, yes, by the books, by the clinical guidelines, but he's also going by some experience too. So I just enjoy him. I enjoy the practice. They are all very sweet and kind people. Even the front desk, just working in healthcare in general, I just realized people are going to have bad days. Like, they're not going to be fuzzy wuzzy and cozy every time. Sometimes they're going to just be like, fill out this paperwork. And that's okay. And that is okay with me, because I know they have personal lives. I know they have interpersonal relationships in the office. Do you like everybody that you work with? And sometimes that rubs off in the ways that you respond to other people. And it is hard. In a perfect and amazing world, we would all be like people who work at Chick-fil-A, but we are not, okay? We are not. We are human beings. We're not robots. And so I am okay with what's going on. I think the care has been stellar. I think even if there has been mistakes on my end, like I sent something not filled out properly, they just sent it right back and say, no, correct it, X, Y, and Z. It's been fine. And so I am looking forward to, if I need future care there, if I need certain treatments there, I'm looking forward to working with them. They have a very structured system, and so far it's worked well with my schedule. So again, I definitely feel like there is a lot of privilege that I have in this experience. But overall, if you consider all of these factors as you are looking for a fertility provider, please consider, just calling them and trying it out and seeing if they have, virtual options to see if you can maybe get personalities over a Zoom call or not. It's difficult. I understand it's difficult, and it can be expensive for some people who are paying out of pocket. But you should really consider, just reaching out to a clinic and seeing how it goes. And if it does not go well, then that is not the end all be all. Granted, there are insurance matters to consider as well. But if you are not having a good time, you're not having a good feeling at first, please consider moving on. This is not a marriage. This is not any sort of contract in any ways, just to get into the door and have a preliminary assessment, just so you can figure out, do you like the front desk people? Do you like the nurses? You're actually going to be talking to them a lot more than you are going to be talking to the provider. Do you like the provider and the style? Do you see people, having attitudes when he or she says something to them? I observed a lot of these, and overall, the personality of this office has just been great. From start to finish, of the diagnostic piece, I haven't started anything else. It's just been a very good time. Yet another thing that you should consider in your fertility clinic selection journey, is, does this practice accept insurance? And does it accept your type of insurance? So what I've learned is that there are multiple plans within a single company. So there are different types of Aetna plans, United plans, and all that. And it all depends on what your employer has chosen and what you also selected during your enrollment period. And so it was important for me to not have to pay out of pocket more than I needed. And so my office has accepted my insurance. They accept most major insurances. I'm not sure if there's any that they do not accept. And then also they actually accept quite a few buy-up plans like Progeny and others that are available to them. So really keep that in mind, so you can call your insurance company to help you with finding what practices that they work with, what preferred providers they have. And then also just call in for free. You can ask either the office manager, the secretary. They often have a list available to them where they can just answer you right on the spot. Or what they can do is collect all of your insurance information and run it through your insurance. They're not charging you anything. They're not charging the insurance anything, but they're just making sure that the codes that they use and the procedures that they use are covered, and to what extent, right? Is it 100%, 80%, 60%? There's all these different percentages, but I am no expert on insurance. But you can ask the experts, which are the office managers and different insurance, coders that are on site, who can help with figuring out what works for you and what works for your plan. Patient reviews. So Google has an option for reviews. There are different websites and apps and support groups that you can go to help with figuring out other people's experiences. One website that I really like is fertilityiq.com. So Fertility IQ started, I believe it's a husband and wife dyad that started it, to help with educating patients on the fertility experience. And they developed this amazing dashboard infrastructure to highlight different voices giving reviews about fertility clinics. And so you can actually go on Fertility IQ, click around, choose a practice. Not only do you get to see the reviews of the actual office, you can get to see the profile of who they are. Because if we understand human nature, we know that reviews are highly dependent on whether or not those people either walked away with a baby, if those people had insurance to cover, certain services, if those people were stressed out, if those people come from different minority groups. Reviews are going to be influenced by all of these factors. So it's really important to understand where people are coming from, and just realize that it's honestly going to come up to your own experience. I have heard some people having terrible experiences with certain fertility clinics, and then other people say they would go back for every single child that they have, and they've gone back for 3 or 4 children through the IVF or IUI process. And so honestly, it's difficult choosing clinics. It is like dating, and it can eventually become like a marriage because that's where you get pregnant. Definitely take your time when you are examining or what fertility clinic you want to go to, and figure out what makes sense for you. Another thing you might want to consider is availability of appointments. So if you are going to be in an office with multiple providers, then you are more likely to get an appointment sooner rather than later. And when I say sooner, I'm talking about in just a few weeks, because they have more options. They have more people that you can start with versus some solo practices or practices with 3 or less people. You might have to wait at least a month. I believe I waited about 6 weeks to get my very first appointment. And I was okay with that. I was coming off of the last miscarriage, and I thought that would just be enough time for me to heal physically and emotionally and go on and start this process of getting evaluated. And so 6 weeks worked for me, and even once the 6 weeks came, it was just rapid availability of appointments to do certain testing. And we're talking about smaller practices as well too. They may have limitations and restrictions on when they do certain tests. So they may have a day just devoted to ultrasounds. Then they only have a day devoted to HSGs, which we'll talk about in a future episode. They may have a day devoted just for egg retrievals because that's when they have the anesthesia nurses and the team available to support them. So please consider, the availability of appointments. Certain physicians, even if it is a larger practice, they have very long waits. I was helping a client recently, and they really wanted to talk with Dr. Lucky Sakon, who is a very popular infertility doctor. And I called on their behalf to make an appointment. And at that point, she had about a 3-month wait because she was very popular. And also you can't take on way too many patients at the same time because you are dealing with people's menstrual cycles. And so you don't want to have a bottleneck situation where you have way too many people trying to get certain exams based on the timeline of their menstrual cycle. Okay. So also consider the availability of appointments. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Fertility Goals. I feel like I don't know what to do with my hands sometimes. But thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Fertility Goals, how to select an infertility practice. I hope it was informative for you. Please let me know if you have any questions on selecting a certain practice, how to look at SART data, how to, look at the reviews, getting access to fertilityiq.com. I'll be linking all of those options and resources in the show notes as well too. But please let me know if you have any questions. Like, share, subscribe. Check out my other videos too. I've been having some very interesting interviews with amazing people on social media. I just did a podcast with Benny. That was so much fun. It's been a year since I've done the Uncut podcast with Sharon, Tammy, and Beatrice. Had a great time there too. The episode I did with Blake, according to Blake, that was amazing. Check out all those episodes. Get yourself informed. I would love for you to be an expert in this, even though I'm the one that researched this, because it means that you can own a lot of your decisions and truly understand what makes sense for you. So hit me up, Fertility Goals Podcast. Have a good day.